So the more I take part in debates and listen to the new atheist arguments against believing in God, the more I've noticed that Darwinian evolution is central to their positions. It's actually pretty obvious if you pay attention and realize how, from their perspective, God not being required for life to exist enables them to dismiss any other evidence that he does. Fine-tuned universe? Nope. We're just animals. And we're not smart enough to know if something was actually designed. Our genetic code requires an intelligent agent in order for it to exist? Nah, it's just chemical reactions. The laws of logic and nature need a first cause? Get out of here. Every aspect of religion? Made up by primitive humans who weren't as enlightened as us. Objective morality? Get real, it's all just subjective. God doesn't exist, so we aren't accountable to anything except what society thinks is the moral in the here and now. Any level of existence beyond this physical life? Not a chance. This is it. Now, as you dig a little deeper and listen to former believers, now atheist activists, talk about how they lost their faith, almost to a person, you will hear something very similar. I went to college, learned about evolution, realized the Bible was wrong, talked to some folks in church, and none of them could answer my questions. And that is what led to me realizing religion was fake, and now they're an atheist trying to save other people from a God who they claim does not exist. This leads to a worldview that death and destruction is caused not by the sinful nature of humanity that is in need of salvation, but because of chance and chaos. There is no ultimate purpose for our existence, and free will, that's just a fantasy. Everything is materialistic, and there is nothing that it cannot be explained by natural causes. This mindset has become so prevalent, I'm actually working on a video right now breaking down the incredible ignorance of one of the most famous current new atheist YouTubers, Genetically Modified Skeptic, so make sure to subscribe so you can watch his arguments get destroyed by actual science. Now let's bring this back to Darwinian evolution and think for a second. What is the root argument? Natural selection replaces the need for an intelligent agent. Therefore, we do not need God in order to exist. This creates a very nice escape from even truly considering the questions we all wish we could ignore. Now they have the ability to just look for flaws in other humans and create pithy thought experiments and make their opponents look foolish. So let's look at what their Darwinian foundation enables them to avoid. If a higher power is required for life to exist, and it is neither logical, plausible, or probable that we could be here without its existence, then it is more reasonable to conclude that what appears to be designed is designed, and therefore God must exist. If life could not exist without a higher power, then it would be logical to conclude all of the logic rules and laws of nature, mathematics, all those things that enable us to exist would also need a higher power. If our universe can only exist because of those laws, then a higher power must also exist. If God exists, then perhaps there is more to our existence than what we see just in this life. Perhaps we will be held to a higher standard. Maybe I will be held accountable for my actions. And oh my, what if I am completely wrong? These are questions that every human must ask themselves at some point in life. What the answers mean to how we conduct our lives is why atheists deride things like Pascal's wager, which is, who has the more to lose? The person who believes in God, and it turns out there's nothing after this life, or the one who believes there is no God, only to find out after death that he does. Now, I'm not suggesting that you should decide to believe in God solely out of fear of being wrong or fear of hellfire and brimstone. What I'm saying is the reality of there being a 50-50 chance God does exist is not something that should be taken, lightly. However, as dogmatic belief in evolution has taken over academia, and as atheists love to claim it is an accepted fact by 99% of scientists, they now have the ability to dismiss all other arguments. They can then accuse theists of being uneducated, unenlightened primitives who just believe in a God of the gaps for all things that seem to be beyond the natural world. By removing the need for God in order for life to exist, they can now completely dismiss these questions and at least act like they are just used to scare people. Religion of any kind is now easily defined as just a method to control people like sheep. This brings me to what my next video will explain in much more detail, and that is the genetic code, and more importantly, the information it contains. Atheists desperately attempt to avoid the premise that it actually contains real information and is not just purely deterministic chemical reactions. The reason for this is if it actually is a programming code base, then it is an unavoidable conclusion that a higher power and an intelligent designer must have caused it to come into existence. In the information age we currently enjoy, to me it's a completely implausible concept to conclude that HTML, CSS, JavaScript, PHP, WordPress, apps, or any of the other aspects of technology that utilize software, that they could possibly come into existence without programmers and designers being required. Now, since the majority of millennials, and for sure pretty much everybody coming after the millennial generation, they've got some basic understanding of code and how it works, even if it's just on a purely intellectual level. Therefore, atheists must desperately attempt to avoid this comparison. I would say there's not a mildly intelligent person on this planet who would ever conclude that their WordPress site could magically pop into existence, nor would they ever conclude that the WordPress content management system could possibly have come into existence, even if you gave it infinite amount of time and an infinite number of universes to work with, without there being an intelligent agent behind it. There's just no logical, plausible, and probable conclusion you can reach that says binary code will magically transform into syntax, semantics, pragmatics, and all of the other if, then, and else logic rules that are required for any type of programming to actually work. But all those things exist in our genetic code, and it is an accepted premise that this code is absolutely required for any form of life to function, let alone reproduce. Beyond that, we have absolutely no idea how it could possibly come into existence purely by chance chemical reactions billions of years ago, let alone develop over time into the organized systems that we call life. Atheists attempt to avoid this by quickly shifting back to accusations of God of the gaps, and how anybody who believes it couldn't have happened by chance is just blinded by religion. However, I would argue that they know in their own minds, if they accept that evolution is not a 100% proven beyond all doubt fact, then everything they have proclaimed to the world, all the arguments they have made, all the people whose intelligence they have insulted and accused of having no real understanding, it's going to be immediately seen for what it truly is, nothing but a facade of false confidence. Then their attempt to escape the overwhelming evidence that God does exist will immediately collapse, and that is something they just cannot bring themselves to accept. As you think about what has been covered in this video, go watch some of the videos made by these activists and truly consider the foundation of their worldview. Look past their fancy language and philosophical arguments and truly consider if what they are saying is ultimately founded upon God not being required for life to exist. That's it for this video. Make sure to like and subscribe, and as you consider what you believe and how we came into existence, make sure to always ask yourself if what you're being told is logical, plausible, and probable.